There is a specific feeling. You've tried to describe it before, maybe at the dinner table, maybe to your kids, maybe just to yourself late at night when the holidays start feeling more like a logistical operation than anything else, and the words never quite come out right. It's not that you want to go back, it's not that you think everything was better then. It's something more precise than that. It's the feeling of a Christmas morning where the whole world seemed to slow down on purpose, where the house smelled like something real, where the most exciting thing in the room wasn't a screen. You know that feeling. You lived inside it. And somewhere along the way, without anyone asking your permission, it quietly disappeared. This isn't a video about being old. This isn't about complaining that things have changed. This is about something that was genuinely built into the Christmases of the 1960s and 70s, something psychological, something real, that the modern holiday has spent 50 years trying to replace with volume and velocity, and has never once succeeded. Let's start with something nobody talks about, the waiting. Not the impatient, anxious waiting of today, not the kind where you refresh a tracking page 17 times to see if the package is on the truck. Something completely different. Something that started weeks before December 25th and built so slowly, so deliberately, that by the time Christmas morning actually arrived, the feeling in your chest was almost too large to contain. You felt it in November, a shift in the air, a particular quality of cold that meant something was coming. The Sears catalog arrived and you understood at a cellular level that the next several weeks were going to feel different from every other week of the year. You circled things in that catalog, maybe with a pen, maybe just with your eyes returning to the same pages again and again like they were sacred. You weren't expecting all of it. You weren't even really asking for all of it. The circling was the point. The wanting was its own kind of pleasure, clean and uncomplicated, because there was no mechanism to immediately satisfy it. That's gone now. It's completely gone. A child today can want something at 9 a.m. and have it by noon. The wanting lasts 3 hours. The anticipation that used to stretch across 6 weeks of your childhood, building and building until Christmas Eve felt like the longest night in human history, that experience doesn't exist anymore. Nobody chose to take it away. Progress just quietly dismantled it without asking. And here is what you understood then that nobody had to teach you. The waiting was the gift. Now let's talk about the house. Not the decorations, not the tree specifically. The house itself, in the weeks before Christmas, transformed into something it wasn't the other 11 months of the year. You remember the smell. Pine. If your family got a real tree, that particular sharp, fresh, slightly overwhelming scent that hit you the moment you walked in from the cold. The combination of something outdoors being brought deliberately inside. Something that didn't belong in a living room and was there anyway, for exactly this reason, for exactly this season. You remember the lights, not the sophisticated color-coordinated LED displays of today. The old strings with the big bulbs, half of them working, one of them always loose, the whole strand needing to be tested bulb by bulb before it could go on the tree. That process alone, as your father on his knees squinting at each bulb, your mother holding the strand, was its own kind of ritual. Not efficient, not Instagram-worthy, but completely, specifically yours. The ornaments came out of boxes that smelled like the basement, like cardboard and time. Each one had a history. The glass balls with the thin paint wearing off in patches, the handmade ones you brought home from school, constructed from construction paper, and glue and an excess of ambition. The ones that had belonged to your grandparents, slightly different in shape from everything else, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with their size. Nobody was decorating for anyone else. There were no photographs being taken for strangers on the internet. The tree was crooked. The ornament placement was chaotic. A 6-year-old sense of aesthetics was fully represented in the lower branches, where everything was clustered together in a dense celebration of enthusiasm over design. It was perfect because it was entirely, unself-consciously yours. Now let's talk about the morning. You woke up before anyone else. This was not a choice. Your body simply refused to sleep past a certain point, driven by something that wasn't quite excitement and wasn't quite anxiety, but existed in the precise space between them. The room was cold, not dangerously cold, but that particular winter morning cold that made the blankets feel more valuable than they did the other 364 days of the year. You lay there for a moment, aware of the silence, aware of the quality of the light coming through the curtains, aware that today was different from every other day, and then the waiting began again. The particular agony of lying in bed knowing that downstairs underneath the tree, the morning was already assembled and waiting for you, and that you could not yet go to it. There were rules, unwritten but absolute. You waited until you heard your parents moving. You waited until the sounds from the kitchen told you the day had officially begun. You lay there in your pajamas, ears straining for the creak of a floorboard, the sound of a door, the distant noise of the percolator starting in the kitchen. That waiting, horizontal, barely breathing, hyper-alert to every sound in the house, was one of the most fully alive you ever felt as a child. There were no phones to pass the time. There was nothing to look at except the ceiling. Just you, the silence, and the almost unbearable knowledge that Christmas was happening one floor below you, and all you had to do was wait a little longer. When you finally came downstairs, the living room was different. The tree lights were already on. Someone had gotten up before you, your father probably, and turned them on, and in the early morning half-light of a December day, the room glowed with something that felt almost ceremonial. The presents were still there exactly where they had been the night before. The room smelled like coffee from the kitchen, and pine from the tree, and something else, something harder to name, that only existed on this particular morning. You sat on the floor. Not because anyone told you to, because the floor was where the presents were, and you wanted to be close to them, to read the tags, to feel the weight and shape of each package without opening anything yet. And here is something important about those presents. There weren't that many. This is the part that sounds like deprivation when you describe it to someone who wasn't there, but you know the truth of it. The scarcity was structural to the experience, because you knew, understood completely, that somewhere in that small pile there was one thing. One specific thing you had been thinking about for months. One thing that represented the full weight of your wanting, carefully wrapped in paper, that you were going to remove as slowly as possible, because you needed the moment to last. You knew before you opened it. The shape gave it away, or the weight, or simply the feeling in your chest that intensified when you picked it up. And then the paper came off, layer by layer, deliberately, and there it was. A Barbie in packaging you'd studied in the store window. A GI. Joe ready for imaginary campaigns that would last all winter. A Lionel train set that your father was arguably more excited about than you were. A Easy Bake Oven. Lincoln Logs. The first Hot Wheels sets, appearing at the end of the decade like a small miracle of miniaturized engineering. These were not disposable objects. You played with them after Christmas. You played with them through January and into spring. You took them out again in summer. They were still there the following year, slightly worn, carrying the specific marks of a year of use. They lasted because you made them last, because there wasn't going to be another one, because this was the thing and it had to be enough. It was always enough. Now let's talk about the television. In the 1960s and 70s there were 3 channels. 3. No remote control, no recording capability, no watching later. If you missed something, it was gone. Vanished into the air it had been broadcast from, irretrievable. This created something that no longer exists in American life, a genuinely shared cultural experience. When A Charlie Brown Christmas aired for the first time in 1965, almost half the country watched it, the same night, at the same time, sitting in their own living rooms with their own families, watching the same slow, melancholy, quietly radical little special about a boy who couldn't understand why Christmas made him feel sad. The next day at school, you didn't ask your friends if they'd seen it. You knew they had, everyone had. There was exactly one thing on television worth watching, and everyone had watched it together, separately, simultaneously, across the entire country. Rudolph, Frosty, the Disney Sunday night specials. These weren't just programs. They were annual events with the weight of ritual behind them. You watched them every year. Your parents watched them every year. The familiarity was the point. The knowing what was coming was part of the pleasure. Your family sat in the same room for this. Not in separate spaces with separate screens. The same room, the same couch, the same moment. Your father may be dozing slightly by the second half. Your mother watching with one eye while her hands did something else. You and your siblings on the floor, closer to the screen than you were supposed to be. Nobody was doing anything else. There was nothing else to do. And in that constraint was a kind of forced presence that modern life has completely engineered away. After the television came the meal. You could smell it before you reached the kitchen. The turkey had been in the oven since early morning. Your mother opening the oven door periodically to check on it with a particular expression. Not quite worry, not quite satisfaction, that only appeared on this day. The kitchen was warm in a way the rest of the house wasn't, heated by hours of cooking, fragrant with butter and roasting meat, and the specific smell of stuffing that you have never once successfully recreated as an adult. The table wasn't perfect. The tablecloth might have been slightly too small. The plates didn't necessarily match, but everyone was seated at it, and that was the only requirement that actually mattered. The conversation wasn't curated. Nobody was performing for anyone. Your aunt said something slightly inappropriate. Your grandfather told a story everyone had heard before. Someone knocked over a glass and it was funny rather than catastrophic. The meal took a long time because nobody was in a hurry to be anywhere else. There was nowhere else to be. That was the point. The afternoon came slowly, the way afternoons used to come before every minute became accountable. The presents had been opened, the meal had been eaten, the dishes were in the sink, and the family simply remained, in the living room, on the floor, in the chairs, without agenda, without schedule, without the low-level anxiety of modern life that insists every moment of unstructured time is time being wasted. Your father fell asleep in his chair. This was expected, almost ceremonial. You played on the floor with your new things. Not for any particular purpose, just playing, the way children play when they haven't been told what playing is supposed to look like or accomplish. The tree lights were still on. The house was warm. The world outside was cold and quiet. And you were exactly where you were supposed to be, doing exactly what the day required, which was nothing except being present inside it. That's what you miss. Not the specific toys, not the specific programs, not even the specific people, though of course you miss them too. What you miss is the feeling of a day that belonged entirely to itself. That didn't need to be documented or optimized or compared to anyone else's version of the same day. A day that was allowed to be ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. A day that smelled like pine and turkey, and your mother's coffee and the particular dusty cardboard smell of ornaments that had been in storage for 11 months. A day that moved slowly because it was allowed to. You didn't know, on any of those December mornings, that you were storing memories. You were just living inside a Tuesday or a Saturday or whatever day Christmas fell on that year. You were just a kid on the floor with new things in a warm room, with the people who were supposed to be there. But something was being built in you, something about what it means to be present, about what it means for a day to be enough, about what it feels like when the world slows down long enough for you to actually inhabit it. You carried that with you. You still have it. And no amount of Amazon Prime delivery speed or algorithmic gift recommendation or perfectly themed holiday aesthetic has ever come close to replicating what it felt like to lie in bed on a cold December morning, listening for your parents to wake up, knowing that downstairs the tree lights were waiting and the presents were waiting and the whole long, beautiful, unhurried day was waiting. Leave a comment below. Tell me one thing you remember about Christmas in the 60s or 70s. Not the big moments. The small ones. The ones that come back to you before you're expecting them. Because those are the ones that tell the truth. See you in the next one.